Hey everyone, happy Thursday. Are you all ready for the party in the evening? That's the big question. You're all ready, replay? Awesome.
Weezer.
Don't miss it. It's one of the best parties in town. My name is Arvind Muthukrishnan. I head up product for Wickr. We are thrilled, honored. I could just keep adding adjectives to have folks from US Army come here and explain why secure comms matter and how Army have started to use Wickr. So if you could introduce yourself, that would be great.
Yeah. Hey, good afternoon. I know this is like right after lunch, so I hope we'll keep this lively. Gabe Chuley, I'm the Army Cloud CTO, and pass it off to Chris.
Yeah, good afternoon. My name is Chris Watts. I'm the Chief of Cloud Services for the U.S. Army Enterprise Management Agency.
And he's the Chief Architect.
And I'm now the Chief Architect.
Yeah. So what we're going to do now is we're going to talk about why secure comms matter, and what is Wickr, obviously, an introduction about Wickr, and then walk you through a few use cases as to how Wickr solves those use cases, what are the needs from US Army and whatnot. So I'm going to request Gabe to start talking about the threat landscape.
Yeah, so why does secure comms matter, right? I imagine a proliferation of folks in this room. Does everybody in here use something other than text message in their daily comms? I'd probably say yes out of everybody. And one of the big factors that people look into is is the communication I use, is it being looked at by an adversary? Is it looked at by someone that I just don't want to see it? And then is it secure, right? So how do we look at that? And so the Army, generally speaking, we are a big force of millions of people, right? So we've got different comms happening. You have people doing text messages to say, hey, PT's at 7 o'clock. You have people using Signal, WhatsApp. There's a million different apps out there. And so why does secure comms matter? At the end of the day, there's a lot of different metrics that go into why we need to, and I think this is a growing slide, so I just need to make sure I have it all in front of me. But there's a lot of different things that are happening out there with regards to foreign nation states, how people are kind of trying to include themselves into your conversations, essentially. So having a secure communication platform across the Army is extremely important to us, right? Not just from an OPSEC perspective, operational security, but also just for the mere fact that we want to make sure that we have total cognizance of how our soldiers are able to communicate in a secure manner and not have potential viruses that they're introducing even to their own devices, just through sheer, it's not sanitary software or whatever it might be. So that threat landscaping is continuing to increase. There's a lot of metrics out there. Just a little graph to show you some of that intrusion over time in the last couple of years here. And encryption is helping solving parts of that, and kind of big reason that we are kind of working hand in hand with AWS as part of that is how do we get secure comms out to our end users where it matters for us to ensure that they have good secure software that they're utilizing along with secure communication, and not having to worry about what they talk about without knowing if someone is listening, and that's a big thing. So defenses that we have, there's end-to-end encryption, and I'll kind of turn it over to
Yeah, sure. So in general, when you have, the threats have evolved. When it comes to intrusions, targeted intrusions have become higher. Gabe showed 160% specifically targeted at government sector with respect to targeted intrusions. It's very important for everyone to protect data. So when server compromise defense, that's where it comes from, because the general assumption is the data lives in a particular central location. That's where people target. Encryption helps you counter that by not just encrypting the data, but also making sure that the data is only on authorized endpoints. So if your server gets compromised, there's nothing there to look at. And that's one of the key, actually, design principles that we have with Wickr 2. And metadata. This is important because we have seen over the last few years, threats have evolved from just focused on data to metadata. Because when it comes to metadata, a lot can be inferred. There's pattern analysis, traffic pattern analysis, who's sending what. Just the metadata of the conversations itself, there's a lot that can be inferred. So it's extremely important to find ways to reduce metadata exposure so that you're guarding against threats out there. And then endpoint. Again, encryption is amazing, but it reduces just one vulnerability, which is the server. But data still lives on the endpoints, which means endpoint management becomes extremely important. You gotta have, as an organization, you gotta have ability to protect the endpoints, manage the endpoints, and also flexibly wipe them out if something happens. So these are the three defenses that we have seen customers take typically to protect their data.
Yeah, and I was going to bring something up that, like, one of the big things, the reason why Army is looking at solutions like this, right? Like the U.S. government, I think the metric is we are the most attacked surface area on the planet, right? Like it is just a consistent front door for everybody to say, like, that is the big target. And it's no different for our endpoints and our end users, right? Not only are U.S. government as a whole the heaviest attack, but everything to do with all of our endpoint users. And that's like the one part that I want to add in on endpoint security, which is important to us. Endpoint security is not just about trying to protect the server where the data lives, right? It is trying to protect our warfighters and end users from that blast radius of being associated with the U.S. government. So.
And then, again, Wickr can help. That's the kind of message that we want to give, and we have thoughtfully designed our product over the last 3 years to keep improving security capabilities to just help solve these problems. So what is Wickr? Just a brief overview. We are, at the end of the day, a collaboration product, a single suite of collaboration product, text messaging, audio, video calling, file sharing, screen sharing, location sharing, you name it, we've got everything. And most importantly, everything is end-to-end encrypted. It's not an optional feature. People don't have to turn it on. Everything is end-to-end encrypted, right from the message, the file, the location, everything you share, the audio, video call you place, everything is encrypted throughout the conversation. And we also understand that there's a lot of apps out there which are end-to-end encrypted, primarily consumer apps. We also understand customers want the ability to manage policies, manage users, and manage data. So Wickr, it's got all the enterprise management capabilities from SSO, you name it, we have it. And we are one of the very few products in the market. There's a myth which says that if it's end-to-end encrypted, data can't be retained. So we are actually working with a lot of governments to kind of break that myth by saying we have a design where we enable end-to-end encryption, and that means AWS as a service provider, we don't have access to the data. And the key part is access. We don't even store the data because there's nothing on the server. It's all stored on the endpoint. And we give customers the ability to store and retain data in a location of their choice. And the key word being the location of their choice, because we understand that government customers want complete control over the data, and we want to make sure we give that flexibility. So we are one of the very few products which does end-to-end encryption, but also enables retention of data for regulatory purposes. And again, we also understand our customers work in a very unique environments sometimes. So yes, a cloud-native product is a great thing to use. It's easy to get started. But our customers, actually, the same customers that we serve cloud-native products to, they also work in edge environments. They also go on missions at the tactical edge. So it's important to have a product that's flexible, that can be used anywhere, whether it's air-gapped or cloud-native, GovCloud, or any other commercial regions. Like Wickr works across all of these scenarios. It's one of the things that our customers go over with Wickr. And just a brief video. It's, at the end of the day, a communication collaboration product. As you can see here, you've got the chats, you've got multiple options, and you can add room members, you can look at the saved items, certain conversations are moderated. The one that's being displayed right now is a moderated room. You can also have casual one-on-one group chats, and then you can look up people in your network, discover people, and start chatting. You can remove people from the room, make others moderators, just a typical collaboration product. The key message that we wanted to give here is we understand that organizations want security, compliance, privacy, but at the end of the day, end users just want to chat easily. So user experience is very important. It's a core tenet that we design against, to say that experience should not compromise security, and security should not compromise experience. Everything should be built the right way so that it's easy to use. And you've got multiple emojis. You can actually go look at people's profile card. We are, in fact, discussing right now how do we actually improve this profile card to show more information than what we show today. So we'll keep improving the product. You've got location sharing, at mentions, emojis. We've got everything. Just going to skip through. And then I'm going to hand over to Chris to talk about mission collaboration.
This one.
Good afternoon. It's my first time at speaking, so bear with me. So what we're trying to do is get our large active duty personnel that are currently using these unsecured messaging platforms, just their daily communications, into a more secure method. So they can make those, like he mentioned earlier, those PT changes, location changes for meetings and stuff like that, to where we know that that information from the leader to the soldier is secure and received. We're also really working on the need to bring in, we say bring your own device. I'd like to also use the term bring your own authorized device.
That's right.
That makes sure that we're ensuring that your device is your device, but we want to make sure that your device is not been broken.
Yep.
So our checks do check for, jailbreaking and rooting, and if those two conditions exist, this application won't work.
Yep.
So it's just, yeah. So one of our big dilemmas that the DoD and the Army has is we have a very good enterprise business product that does collaboration, does document sharing, but that's internal to us. We have reduced its attack surface that you can't even access this product from the regular internet anymore. So we need to have a better platform that can be smaller, more lightweight, easier to use, and also it has that ability to communicate with our partners, and that's really the good thing about the platform. Yeah, so the consumer applications we have, we've all seen them. They're great, and that's kind of where you guys have built the product that looks like it. So there's really no training that we've needed to provide any of our pilot users. They are fully in it and running within minutes of their login.
I'll definitely touch on something with you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Kind of like, so, everybody in the military, they put their aluminum foil hats on a lot of times. They're saying, I don't want you to mandate some sort of technology on my device, right? And so we're always trying to apply that fine line where it says, hey, we don't want to put a bunch of software on your phone, and now you think we're stalking your phone, and now you don't feel comfortable using your own phone, right? So that is a fine line that we try to find, that nice fine line of saying, hey, this device is secure enough that we can make sure that your communication's in the clear, kind of like how people use Signal or any of those other communication types, Signal, WhatsApp, and Telegram. But at the same time, so we want to make sure it's secure for Army purposes, Army type communication. You can still use the other apps, but we'd prefer obviously to have communication about operational security activities, to be within Army constraints. But also, how do you that dilemma there? How do you mandate MDM, mobile device management, on a particular user's phone that says, it's my device. I don't feel comfortable with you mandating software to be put on my hardware. So, and it's not a small challenge. It's not like we have a 5% that says that. It's a much greater battle. It's usually 5% that are willing to do it and 95% that don't want to do that. So. Those challenges to collectively really drive kind of working through a product that helps us kind of find that nice fine line between being overly directed on software that we require for them, and then also being secure enough to feel comfortable with how our soldiers are communicating, timelines, locations, and stuff like that.
It's also the combination of all of this, right? It's not just one thing. You have told us before, which is it's difficult to bring foreign partners into government's boundary. Enterprise products are set up really well in a mental model that says, it's my house, my rules, which means if I have to have a conversation with you, I got to bring you into my house. and you can't bring a lot of people into your house, and hence people find creative ways to actually establish communications.
Creative means bad usually. So
That's right. And what we want to enable is
facts matter.
if I could have that, like, what we want to enable is exactly that, which is, how can Wickr help? Like, we have built this in a way that you don't have to have the mental model of my house, my rules anymore. Everybody can have their own house. You can still talk to each other. There's this thing called internet, which is brilliant and beautiful, which enables communication. So we have designed Wickr to be a digitally sovereign service. Like, what that means is, US Army, you guys can set up your network in GovCloud, which is the home for all key classified confidential collaboration. But you don't have to bring foreign partners. Your allies can set up Wickr in their own region, Frankfurt, Sydney, wherever, and then you can freely communicate between each other, just like what you would do with WhatsApp and Signal, except that it's authorized, Wickr is authorized, it's got administrative controls, it's got everything. I think that's where we would love to kind of hear your thoughts on how GovCloud Federation, one of the key projects that we worked on, has enabled certain scenarios.
Oh yeah. So having the model in the GovCloud, it did allow us to build the platform in the level that is required for the government. The integration between federated partners means that we can dictate which commercial Wickr networks that we're going to allow us to communicate with at a granular level. We can have a set of, you built it on security groups. So we can have one security group with a set of users talking to commercial Wickr A and another group of users talking to Wickr B.
And I'm going to highlight a good example. And we kind of call it foreign partners, right? It could be foreign partners, and it could be something else. So during the last Hurricane Helena, we got asked by 18th Airborne Corps and said, look, we need to go in and support, but we need to talk to the police. And we need to talk to local law enforcement and fire departments and all that. So how do we do that very quickly? I think you had that service up in 15 minutes?
15 minutes.
And we were able to, 10 minutes. So, we had the thing up very, very quickly, very rapidly. We were getting people brought into the service. And I don't know if you want to talk to some of the parts, but.
No, it was, yeah,
he produced a website for people to self-register.
Yeah, it was easy to integrate. That was really the ease of use, versus, our other platforms that we use that are taking a large, administrative overhead. The overhead on this was one person, myself, at the time, building this network for Hurricane in my basement of my house in the storm.
You're not an average one person. You're a super talented one.
But I do believe the average person can do it.
That's amazing.
It was AWS console create.
It's truly a SaaS.
It was very, very easy.
Yep. And if you could talk about, when we spoke a couple of weeks back, I was fascinated to hear about, yes, within the AWS console, you can create a network, you can bring your IDP, you can set up everything in a couple of hours for all of enterprise. But what I was fascinated to hear was you were able to leverage your existing integrations, like with, again, the world is a big world. We have multiple solutions, right? Like if we built Wickr in a flexible way, but the way you explained us, where we can leverage Power Platform to do a bunch of stuff and leverage that investments to bring into Wickr and enable onboarding just in 10 seconds. If you could touch on that, that would be great.
The platform has a published API. Mm-hmm. So, with that, we were able to integrate our business systems, our lists and tables and our pages and our normal websites that we use. By bringing this in, we actually we're able to see user management, user activity, and all that without actually accessing Wickr because you have that API. And that allowed us to expand our administrators, our user administrators, to where they actually don't need access to Wickr anymore. They just needed access to the console that we created to provision, deprovision, suspend users.
Because that's key, because AWS console is a great experience. But from an exposure standpoint, not everyone needs access to it.
Right.
Like you have a lot of other systems where people have access to. And like, what was fascinating to me was how you were able to leverage those other systems, not bring more people into AWS console because you manage a lot of services within that console. So don't give them that exposure, minimize that exposure, but leverage the existing systems to request to onboard, deprovision, and everything. That was actually very fascinating to hear.
Yeah, and the ease of use of the IDP, bringing your own SSO, we tied it to our identity, and again, in about less than 3 hours, I don't have the admin control to identity, so I had to work with the other teams, but it was very simple and easily following the documentation, and when we were, logged in within that time frame.
It's great.
And it allows us to be really, as he said, we only have so many cloud administrators, right? Now he's opened that breadth up to really be our non-privileged users can now self-manage their stuff, add privileges, remove privileges without bothering this guy every 5 minutes. So,
yeah, and then BYO, like, bring your own authorized device. And in general, like, we have heard this from a lot of customers to say that, in fact, I should say this, the reason why we are one of the very few products that can federate outside of GovCloud is because of the security posture that we have. Because we don't retain any data within our infrastructure, export compliance, ITAR, everything becomes extremely simple because everything lives on the endpoint that the customer controls, right? So if you could talk about how that security posture enabled you to have a lightweight, like Gabe spoke about, how MDMs are tricky, like, not a lot of people would want to put them on personal devices. If you could speak about how we enable, how your decision process on how, thought process and how.
I'm going to say what he said a different way. Let's talk about how we've made it so that we can support, law enforcement where they may not have the type of devices, but also help with our secure type of comms through your multi-network excellence that you've built out.
Okay. Yes. I'm sorry.
Good answer.
Yeah. So a lot of the platforms, with mobile device management and the checks, the controls built into the platform, into the administrative console allows us to make sure that device is good. Recently with Apple users, we see version changes and we make sure, and when we get a notice that a particular version is compromised, we have the ability to say, this is the minimum version of the Apple or Android operating system. And if you don't meet that, you're not able to log in. So that's really good. But that didn't require us to put a whole lot of management on the phone. It's still my phone.
Yep.
It's just that it's the mobile device management, but only at the application level. So
it's a sanity check,
right,
at the end of the day.
So otherwise, the app has no awareness of the other apps, and those apps don't have awareness of it, and that's really.
And that's important because this goes back to the point that we made in the beginning, which is the data lives on the endpoints, which means you got to protect the endpoint. You got to make sure that the endpoint is safe. What was interesting to me was when we spoke to hear about how you have already built these checks in place and how Wickr was able to just sit on top of it easily and then make sure that people on their personal devices, because one of the key pain points that we intentionally wanted to solve is, again, like I said, security is great, privacy is great, authorizations is great. If you don't make it easy for users to just install and use it, they will most likely go away and use something else.
Well,
so,
and one of the things that you're working towards too really was that decision tree, right? Like as you.
Yeah, we were building the form. When we were
Correct.
building our sign-up process, we were letting them kind of ask the questions. What kind of device do I have? Am I comfortable putting this on my personal phone, yes or no? We can kind of drive you to the best experience. Whereas, with mobile device management and just application management, Wickr is on the device. Or do we offer one of our other BYOD solutions where Wickr's in a virtual device behind another application provider that we've partnered with.
And one of the flexible things that's made for us too is that, hey, you know what, if you are willing to do the mobile device management pieces, we're willing to let you have more features, like mapping, like sharing of files. And maybe if you're not, you're going into a different network, which gives you very limited accessibility and tools.
Yeah, there's definitely the tooling. If you're just like, if you're not comfortable with the full management, maybe I put you in a group where you just have text messaging. You can't access files. You know, if your company or your organization shares a document with you,
That's amazing.
if you didn't accept that level
terms of agreements,
then
right?
you can't open the file.
So
You can just get the messaging portion.
That's amazing, because like, what I'm learning from this is to say that you're letting your users choose what device they want to bring.
Yes.
And you're telling them, look, I'm going to give you basic communications by default.
Yes.
But if you want to elevate your capabilities,
You wanna
do
see that
XYZ,
file.
do XYZ, and then we'll be able to programmatically control giving access to that. That's amazing. I mean, to be very honest with you, I'm just very happy that Wickr
It
powers
is
all.
volunteer based.
If you want to see the good memes, then you got to
Right.
join full MDM. If you don't,
As an army, we cannot force one of our soldiers or civilians to put an application on their personal device.
That's right.
You know, if
Incentivize.
somebody on my team says, I don't want a personal phone, I don't want anything to do with it, congratulations, I'm sending you an iPhone. You can carry 2 phones. That's what's going to happen. But we want to make sure that they have that flexibility, and then we try to put just the basic communication between, squad leaders, soldiers, and just our force structure to make those
Correct, because
blast, be able to hit their organization
that's right.
in a single message.
and just to be clear, it didn't take a lot of work for us to figure this
No.
out either. And that's like the beauty of what we've learned was that you can do all this in the same account. Like it's really just kind of like a logic that you have to understand up front what you want to do, and then you've kind of gotten to the point where now we've got the ultimate flexibility. We can bring in foreign partners if we wanted to within the
We can.
framework. So
That's awesome. And I also think, like in general, when it comes to MDMs, like this is where I found this to be fascinating based on your use case, where same user, different devices. One device, if they don't elevate their MDM posture, they can still communicate. In another device, they elevate their posture, they can access files and whatnot. It gives them flexibility to say, on my personal device, I've got my chat going. I can reach out to people. On my official device, I can do more.
You can do more.
So that was actually a very fascinating learning. And again, the reason why I'm harping on this more is because we spoke about evolving threats, right? Text messaging is not that secure. We all knew what happened last week in terms of the exposure a lot of governments have had in general, which is why I think your design of, even on personal devices, lightweight, but enable messages, just takes that threat vulnerability out of the way. But thank you for sharing that experience. And then Saber Strike.
Yeah, I wasn't there, but I do know what happened. One of our combat brigades over in Europe, in one of their normal annual rotation of exercises that work with a lot of partners, they did piloted it even before we did, the capability, and they spoke to foreign partners. They were in their own network. We were in the SaaS. It's also the integration of the Wickr Enterprise, which is the on-premise version of Wickr, connecting all those dots between the tactical edge, the cloud, and then the partners. And this diagram is what the team and the Wickr team had came up with on how they were able to bring the application with an integration with with TAC,
Yeah.
with the what is TAC stand? With the TAC application, ATAC, ITAC, and integrate chat with maps, and then that was shareable to the partners in their implementation of Wickr. Could have been their Wickr Enterprise, could have been their Wickr SaaS. We don't know. We just need to know the network, and we enabled communications between us and the partner, and they were able to conduct that exercise in a secure manner.
My team was on the ground in Poland for this exercise, supporting you all as customers. I still remember, this is probably a month after we delivered Code Federation, built guest access, delivered a new architecture for the self-hosted version, and we were all extremely thrilled to see the outcome of this, and the ability for people on the ground to be able to just flip between, I'm going to just talk within my unit in a very controlled environment, and then I'm going to flip a switch and talk to allies.
And just to be clear, like the Army makes communication look about the hardest it could possibly be. Like Army CIO's in the front line here, and he can definitely talk about how I have to call him out because he's, we go out of our way to sometimes make communication difficult just because I think it's like we like the pain. So we like to prove out obviously in tactical situations. Hey, we have degraded comms. We're going to go through 17 different hops before we get to normal communications. The good part was all this worked in between that. That's the main point of that whole story, right? So we've kind of determined that hey, we can show. You can have disconnected comms and it comes back and you get back to the experience where you need to be. And tactical comms is what a tactical comms is, right? So we don't want to have that enterprise kind of look and feel when we're doing tactical actions. And
yes.
And like capability showcase, again, we spoke about scenarios. Like what I wanted to kind of show is how the experience is. Like
So in that Saber Strike and in our existing network, one of the great capabilities you do have is it's language translation. It's already built into the platform. We just enabled it. It was a slider, off on, and basically what it allowed us to do is let the user speak in their or chat in their native language. You can highlight the message. You get a little in the middle picture. A dialog box, you click translate, and then using whatever model you guys are using, converts that to the language that I want to read.
correct.
So then I reply in my language, he does the opposite, and you now had communications with you and a partner
seamlessly.
without having to actually have a language barrier. That was a very good feature. And it's even used in our networks today.
I want to touch upon the whatever model you are using.
Oh, sorry.
Because
I don't know.
No.
To me, I don't know. I just saw a button. Boop.
Exactly, which is important because the reason why it's important is we had so many heated debates on how should we build this, because it's an important feature. It enables communication, but at the end of the day, there's a lot of decisions that need to be made in terms of security, because data is very important to us too. So in general, I thought how we built this was fascinating to say that obviously we use Amazon Translate. Amazon Translate is a digitally sovereign translation model that's available in many regions, including our cloud authorized. But we saw many products do managed translation. Service managed translation. They own the translation instance and they actually translate, which means it actually kind of compromises our core tenet that we should not have access to your data. So what we did was we intentionally said customers can go spin up their own Amazon Translate account and connect it with Wickr. So this way, it's customer owned translation. It's not service managed. I just wanted to make that distinction because a lot of customers come and tell us that
they want to do an API call to some other service outside of your secure end-to-end network.
Correct.
To then,
That's right. And then we also will say, bring your own model. Like if you as a customer have invested in building your own translation model, you have authorized it at a particular level, this gives us the ability to say, yes, Amazon Translate is a great product you can bring, but if you've got your own translation model, bring that in. That's actually one of the key design choices that we made. And then obviously the cross-boundary experience.
Yep. So one of the great features and you only see this on the GovCloud users, if you are communicating with someone that's outside of the GovCloud, you do get a warning that you have to click, that you understand that you are now talking to somebody outside the government region. The message and rooms and chats have the green banner, stating that this conversation is unclassified, and that's a great feature to make our people aware that their conversation is now crossing from GovCloud to the commercial regions.
Yeah, and again, talking about design choices, I'll explain to the audience how we came up with this is we learned that from a lot of customers, including you, when you gave feedback about this, that people don't intentionally sometimes say things that are not confidential. They think, okay, I'm in a group of 10 people. I see 2 or 3 people that I trust, so this must be a trusted room. But you don't know, it's very hard for users to think every single time, I gotta go look at the 10 people. I gotta make sure, which is where we came up with this idea to say,
to get like 100 people.
Exactly. Programmatically, let's just figure out people are not from the same boundaries. And if they're not from the same boundaries, we probably should let them know that they're not from the same boundaries and give them visual indication to make a decision. Yes, I can say this. Yes, I cannot say this. Like that's where this kind of design came from, and your feedback has been incredibly helpful to kind of shape this experience in the right way.
Yep. Yeah, and we noticed with every user and room, you guys added a little blue world.
Yep,
that,
the blue
that is
glow.
an indication in your list of chats that
Exactly.
that is an external chat.
That's right.
You're part of us or you're not part of us, and you get a lot of indications. It's helpful.
Yep, great. And we spoke about mission critical comms, Saber Strike, and one of the other there is a lot of communication types, right? There is, cookie in the break room conversations. There is, I want to send this document, I want to send this picture. And then there's confidential communications, and then there's classified communications. Like what we have learned is as you go higher up in terms of classification and data security, the market's not very well served. Like there are a lot of products that does a lot of things. The experience is not great for the customers. So for us, like making sure that we provide a seamless experience for your classified comms is very important. And if you could talk about the needs in the classified communication space, that would be great.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's definitely a couple different use cases. I mean, I came from an Intel community side, a bunch of us in here that have worked previously in there. Intel community, we joke about it, like we're like the redheaded stepchild of trying to figure out how to get enough technology to us because everything is air gapped, right? So we are in a consistent battle of figuring out, hey, what technology would be helpful for us to collaborate, right? But also be secure. And then in some cases, the use cases behind it. So, there's the use case of, hey, I want to have confidential communication between maybe me and like a human source, where I want to make sure that that person has absolute confidence that it is just between me and that person for communication for obvious reasons, right? But then you also have collaboration amongst, you and your peers on a network. One of the core features that we've learned is that we are able to load, Wickr on both mobile devices, but also on your desktop, and you can kind of link those devices together and have a common core communication chain. So you're not really disconnecting yourself from your communication. Where it's kind of funny in the classified world, we have to get on the phone, you have to jump out of the skiff, get on your phone, text somebody, and then I have to jump back in the skiff and start talking. So that's kind of helped that aspect of being able to work with, whether it's partners or other organizations, is that you have one common baseline to how you communicate amongst.
And keep in mind in those regions, in our more highly classified regions, only recently, in this year, did we actually move to a platform where we were using email and it was not Microsoft Exchange on-prem.
Right.
We just now moved to a managed service. Right. When we talk about chat on those networks, we're still on XMPP, on-prem server-based communications. And we're maintaining these servers across the network. Even with AWS, the AWS GovCloud console.
Yep.
Imagine working in the AWS console 4 years ago. That's the console we're working in. So I'm having trouble looking at documentation nowadays to go, oh wow, AWS got rid of that. How did they do it back then? Okay, now I remember and get there. So getting these newer technologies, and now we're getting a lot faster. Yep. And getting these things in the region is trying to get, this is how I use it on this network, and now I'm going to be able to use the same thing on this other network.
That's right.
In the desktop experience.
And the consistency of experience matters. Gabe, you spoke about, how do I have to do this here and then go out and come back? The consistency of experience to say, okay, I'm having a classified conversation, and then I'm going to go have an unclassified conversation, and I know there are visual indicators in the experience that says this is an unclassified, this is a classified conversation. It makes it super easy for users to say the right things at the right places at the right time. Improves efficiency. And one of the things that we learned from a lot of customers in use, how as we go higher up, yes, data security is important, but then compromising identities could actually lead to a lot of unwanted situations, right? Like, and this is where going back to the initial threat landscape points that you made, Gabe. Threats have evolved from data to metadata, and what people usually, the threat actors, what they usually go after when they look at metadata, is to understand traffic patterns, find out where people are, and then compromise identities over there. If you could explain, give us a couple of scenarios on how that threat landscape has evolved.
No, I mean, that's where kind of like where I was talking about with even like a human source, right? Like we would want to have, and it may not even be a source, it may just be communication that they're going on some sort of objective thing, right? They have to go out. Operational security to the Army is absolute paramount, right?
Yep.
We don't want to know when a plane is landing in a foreign country sometimes, because that operation, but it might not even be an operation, it's just we don't want people to know our soldiers are in midair, because it is, sometimes in threat countries. So having a way to both classify that information, but also communicate that out in a robust manner is absolutely essential to us. And even one of the kind of interesting things is, as we operate, we have a couple different notions, right? You got the idea that we've got multiple classification levels. Getting people into SCIFs is really difficult. No one wants to sit inside a boarded up room all day and sit in the dark and code all day. So what we try to do is figure out how do you communicate like an outage even from a classified level out, so like people from a network operations center don't have to sit there all day long waiting for the network to go out, right? As we get our networks to be more resilient, hopefully we have less people having to sit there staring at a graph waiting for the cloud or whatever it is to fail. So having a way just to even communicate in a secure manner out to maybe even just a help desk or whatever it is to help, hey, I need you to trigger an action or whatever it might be. Those are some of the areas.
Yeah, and I think I want to take a moment to talk about how Wickr can help just generally classified communication needs. And you have touched upon this, which is you can load Wickr in a radio kit. It's very flexible. It's cloud agnostic in terms of deployment, and you can ship a backpack with people, and they can have Wickr in a backpack. So I think we have done some great work to enable that, and we are super honored and proud that you're able to use this in these scenarios. And then ephemeral messaging. I think this is an important one. We have heard that customers like you send messages with ephemeral timers, burn on read, because the data lives on the endpoint, right? When somebody accesses that endpoint, the data is still there. Capabilities like destroy this message after 5 seconds after the other person has read the message has been useful to a lot of customers. And then we spoke about administrative controls. It's very essential even in the classified space. And files. So this is a conscious investment we have made, because what we have seen with classified space is it's not just the messages, it's documents. And right now I think we are working together to, one of your asks was, can we make sure that the documents that live inside Wickr can only be viewed within Wickr? Yep. It cannot be downloaded, and that gives you the ability to kind of protect confidential data in a secure hub enclave kind of a way. And then Wickr Open Access, this is traffic obfuscation. So, like how you mentioned, threats have evolved. The Wickr Open Access capability, like we just mask our traffic as AWS traffic and not Wickr traffic. So the threat actors that's looking at metadata, looking at understanding, oh, this app is sending this particular traffic, this app is sending this particular traffic. That's how they narrow down. We just make the haystack so much bigger in a way that they can't narrow down, because it could be from a restaurant in Germany, it could be from a flower shop in Spain. So that's one of the key investments we made, just to amp up the capability of ensuring we protect the identity of people against the threat vectors, especially targeted intrusions. And just to show an experience, this is something that we launched very recently. Like, we have a files tab now, dedicated files tab, where you can organize, manage, view all your confidential files. And once we implement the ability to not download files to the machine. You got a secure shell where confidential data lives within a particular conversation.
Oh, my favorite topic.
Yes, bots. Good and bad, but we'll fix the bad. In general, we understand that the capabilities that we offer out of the box is great, but not enough. Customers would want to programmatically configure their workflows for key scenarios, like how Chris, you have done with the Power Apps.
Yep.
Like our APIs have helped, but you want that's good for administrators, but you want users to do stuff within Wickr too. So this is an example of US telemedicine Tatric organization where they have implemented a telemedicine workflow within Wickr. As you can see here, the list of actions here are all programmatically configured, pulling from a particular data source. And then, when someone wants an emergent consult, they don't have to hit a phone. They don't have to do anything. They can just pick an option from here. A room gets automatically, programmatically created. And then the physician on call gets pulled into the room. And you can now escalate this conversation into a telemedicine video call, get help. Because what we learned from Tatric, who shared the stage with us last year, is that they have this concept of the golden hour, where if someone gets injured on the field, the first hour is of paramount importance. If you delay getting help to them, you actually increase the risk of something bad happening to them.
75%.
Right? 75%, exactly. So this reduced their response time, this implementation, and it was props to Tatric for coming up with this design. They actually said this improved their average response time from somewhere around 20 minutes to 1 minute 30 seconds, which was fascinating to hear.
Yeah. And in the Army, I know you've said it, and I think we both said it before, is like this is the perfect kind of use case for us, like a 9-line. Like
Yep.
in the field, our soldiers are all trained to look at 9 lines, and they know exactly what to put. But like, in the heat of the fight, if you will, you don't necessarily remember what those 9 lines are supposed to look like. You don't remember what you're supposed to say. So the bot actually can help guide someone and say, okay, where are you? Oh, I can actually ping your location and know exactly where you are. Okay, what's your name? Oh, it's going to pull it from your location. So there's a lot of really unique
Yeah,
things.
and when integrated with TAC, sends that dot, puts that pin on the map for
Correct.
them to find them. Yep.
And bots have really, really opened the door, and I don't remember if that's part of the next slide or not, but like bots have really opened the door for us on what you can do. And it's kind of like comical because I've gotten some bots to work good, and I've gotten some bots that I really want to throw out and never look at ever again. But like, the broadcast bot, for example.
Yep. Yeah, a real simple bot. Administrator can say, I want to send my global message to my group that PT's at 7. Yep. And the bot takes care of it. And then you can continue to ask the bot who hasn't read my message, who hasn't hit the acknowledge button. Future also is where were they when they hit the acknowledge button if you enable the location feature. And,
Yeah.
and that was pretty good in the bots. And the bots are, your SDKs publicly. So some of our developers in other locations have already started it and started creating their own, based on that organization's mission use.
And also, again, over here, I want to emphasize on security in the sense that our bots are also end-to-end encrypted. They are another end-to-end encrypted endpoint that shares the same crypto protocol, which means any transaction that happens from Wickr to that bot is always encrypted.
Yep.
And then customers, programmatic logic kicks in and it does workflows and everything. But we want to maintain that security standard when it comes to everything that goes out of Wickr and comes into Wickr.
Yeah, and I can actually confirm that because I've probably had Chris destroy enough networks on Wickr for me trying to forget how to remember the password, for example, as we were playing with kind of bots. And at the end of the day, like it's actually good to
learning
see.
experience.
It's good learning experience. Good to see that security is in place. And some of the other bot use cases, right? So like you've got broadcast, so that hey, we need to, as like in the hurricane situation, we wanted to have the capability in place so that they could say like we need to know everybody's okay right now. So that was like an immediate like, okay, it's a good thing for us to say we can have everybody check in and we know everybody in the 18th Airborne that was supporting hurricane actions, they're good. The other kind of use cases are like, a Gen AI bot.
Yep.
we can ask it questions that we've guardrailed into place, right? So you've got different bots that have different use cases. You can develop your own bot that says every hour I want you to bug me.
Yeah, having the bot talk to Bedrock or talk to some of the other platforms, and that data is not remembered, so it doesn't remember the previous question you asked it. So, we really are trying to do things where I'll take a photo of the Army CIO and say, who is this?
Yeah.
See if it can find out who he is, and then tell me who it is, or what kind of car is this?
Yeah.
Trying to get it to. We're not teaching it. We just want to know if it can have the ability to say,
tank and
what is this?
Oh, this is this model. Right. Yeah. It's
and again, that's where
powerful.
Like the key tenet for us with workflows and bots is that we understand customers have made investments in many places to solve for many scenarios.
Right.
We want them to leverage that and bring them into Wickr so that you can enable the field to leverage those scenarios. Because at the end of the day, people on the field, if they have access to Wickr, we want our customers to give them access to many scenarios through Wickr. Like that's the essence of how we have built it. And then you've played with Bedrock and you've brought in Bedrock, which is great. Gabe always kind of gives a hard time on this doesn't work right on my computer.
Well,
so we'll make sure that that's addressed. But it's fascinating for us to hear about all the different ways you're trying to solve for these scenarios.
Yeah, and then the general bot community you have is very open, right? Like I think it's kind of cool to see that there's this bot community where you can go and create bots to do any kind of task. I think you were going to make the morning dad joke bot.
Yeah.
And
Give me a joke every day when I wake up. It's pretty fun.
Yeah. And just to wrap up, I want to make sure we have time for questions from you as well. So we have two SKUs. We have AWS Wickr, which is our cloud native offering. Again, it's AWS managed, available in GovCloud, 10 commercial regions as a digitally sovereign service, and got all the authorizations up to IL5 in US and internationally IRAP C5. We've got all of that. The only difference between cloud native and enterprise is just who gets to manage it. The capabilities are the same, the experience is pretty much the same, but with Wickr Enterprise, it's just very flexible. You can run on air gap networks, run on radio networks, run on satellite networks, you name it, your private networks. But the experience part, what we have heard from customers, it's just so simple and easy to use for the users, just takes a lot of pain away. So those are the two kind of SKUs we have, and I'll just skip this in the interest of time. Recap. Again, every conversation is end-to-end encrypted. Wickr has flexible controls to manage your users' policies. And one of the key value props for Wickr is we always want customers to control data and policies. So AWS as a service provider has not just access, we just don't have your data. It's one way with you and your users. And advanced features like Wickr Open Access helps customers do things more in very adversarial scenarios. And generally, if you're interested in hearing more or learning more about Wickr, reach out to your AWS account rep or reach out to us directly. We'll be more than happy to understand your use case and innovate on your behalf. Thank you. Thanks, Gabe. Thanks, Chris, for sharing the stage. We'll open up to questions.